sometimes on their way, on their fertility journey.
Mm-mm.
Um, and then not always, not every client that I see, obviously, but then, sometimes I get to work with the people that I've worked with fertility through
Yeah.
potentially being, their birth keeper, their
Yeah.
doula sort of throughout.
Yeah. All right. Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna touch on all of that. I'm certain of it.
Okay.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Milk and Mummies. I am Rachel, your host, and today I am joined by Simone Dyer. She is the founder of The Most Sacred Journey. She's a birth worker and a body worker and a mother herself. So we're going to be talking all things motherhood, womb wellness, healing, and just I feel like everything we should be talking about and we don't do enough of. So let's get into it.
Mhm.
Hi, how
Hi,
are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. I mean, just diving straight into it. I guess, can you share a bit about your journey into motherhood and how it shaped or transformed the work that you do?
Wow.
Loaded first
Yeah,
one.
yes,
Love
of
it.
course. So my journey to motherhood,
Mm.
gosh, I mean, it feels like I was wanting to be a mother since I was like a baby,
Oh,
not a baby,
amazing.
but a small,
Yeah.
a small child,
Yeah.
and can remember like trying to breastfeed my dolls. So I
Oh.
feel like I've always had that like
Mm.
maternal instinct. And yeah, I became a mother
Mm.
in 2023, so
Mm-hmm.
November 2023. 16 months in so
Yeah.
far.
Congratulations. Cool.
Thank you. And yeah, the journey there was pretty I mean, pretty long in the sense that I feel
Okay.
like I waited, a long time.
Mm.
But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of value in that. I'm grateful that I got to live a lot of life,
Yeah. Mm.
beforehand. Um, and I think in terms of sort of like how it has shaped, my work and
Mm.
things like that, it's also intertwined. I think the
Yeah.
building and the becoming of myself,
Mm-hmm.
the different things that I experienced. One of the big things being actually child loss in my early 20s.
Okay.
So I'd had a loss very early
Mm.
on and then waited quite a long time before, having a baby again. And, that's layered. It's like, meeting the right partner
Yeah, of
and
course. Yeah.
things like that, right?
Time.
So
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, I'm waiting till this age, but,
Yeah.
you got to wait till the right things align. So in that time, actually, when I was about 17,
Mm.
I was recovering from a minor surgery,
Mhm.
and I was at home laying on my mum's sofa, and I was watching, I don't know if you remember the Discovery Channel,
Yeah, yeah.
and stumbled upon back-to-back episodes of home births and
Ooh,
birth
intense.
stories,
Yeah.
2 different programs, but they were just, like how we used to watch Nickelodeon as kids,
Yeah.
and it
Back
was
to
like
back to
back to
back
back, sister,
content.
sister.
Yeah.
So I was literally for 2 weeks obsessed with watching
Wow.
these home births and birth stories, and that's where I found out about what a doula was.
Okay.
So, I did a little bit of research, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds amazing, like,
Wow.
I wanna do this."
That's great. Well, I mean, like at 17, it didn't put you off because obviously you're, I guess, trying to think of what TV was like back then. You're going to be seeing things with not necessarily graphic, but they
Yeah,
weren't
yeah, yeah.
sugarcoating
The
stuff, right?
screaming,
Yeah.
laying on your back, sweating,
Yeah.
waters breaking everywhere, all the
Right.
dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what it was? I think so my mum was a very young mother. She had
Hmm.
me at the age of 15.
Okay.
So I think I had an awareness about, motherhood and, certainly like have my mum having a child young. I
Yeah.
was very aware of that from quite a young age.
Mm.
So I guess the talk around, just motherhood and all of that was quite normal for me. And
Mm.
as I said, was quite maternal from a young
Yeah.
age. I loved babies. I loved children. Everywhere my mum would take me, she would always say, like, you're just like a child magnet. Like all the kids would like rally
Gravitate
round.
into you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I found out what a doula was then on my mum's sofa, did the
Mm.
research, and I was like, great. Okay. I can't afford £2,500 to do the
Wow,
training.
yeah.
And also I was like, who's going to actually want or hire a 17-year-old doula? So,
Mm.
it was like amazing for a moment. And then like
Life,
life
the
went,
realities
the
and that, yeah.
reality of life. Yeah. It went on. But then, a decade later circled back.
Mm.
I actually went down like the route of all sorts. I mean, I went into banking, I went
Mm.
into, yeah, all sorts of things. And then, as I said, I had a baby loss at 21. I had
Yeah.
a stillbirth.
Okay.
So again, I think going through that experience, really, I wouldn't say necessarily it reignited my interest for birth work straight away by any means, but
Mm.
obviously it's a layered and a complex experience that, I don't think you ever completely heal from, but
Okay.
that it's a journey.
Mm.
But it certainly, made me a much more aware of just my body, this process of pregnancy and birth and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, when I was then about 27, I sort of had left the world of what I worked within music for some years,
Okay.
and I
I've got to pull out that thread. As a singer, as a writer, as
no,
a
no,
go on.
not as a singer. So a few things.
Yeah.
It started off as makeup. So
Okay.
I did makeup artistry.
Love it.
Um, for some years for like music videos and stuff,
Yeah.
and I've got a lot of friends that are
Creative in
singers
that
and
space.
creatives
Yeah.
in different ways. And yeah, and then and then I also did like tour management,
Wow.
worked at a record label. I used to work at Island
Yeah.
Records, so there was quite a few different things within that, but yeah, no singing. um and yeah, then so when I was about 27, I kind of had this moment where I was like, just feeling like I wanted a shift in my
Mm.
work. I just wanted something that, I just felt like was going to fill my soul up
Mm.
a bit more than where I was at the time. And I actually ended up going to this lady for a treatment.
Okay.
And that happened to be the wonderful Dr. Gowrie Motta. She is the founder of the gentle birth method.
Okay.
And I was just having a treatment with her for myself in relation to my cycle, like a massage,
Mm.
and just talking to her about her work, and I was so fascinated. She's a childbirth pioneer, and actually brought water births into the NHS.
Wow. Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
no way. Like, yeah, she.
So sorry, this whole area in this space is so new to me, as in
Mhm.
really trying to understand what doulas work, what they do, or birth workers do. Like, it's
Mhm.
just, sorry, I'm just geeking out a little bit essentially.
No, it's all
But
good.
it's kind of like, from my understanding and knowledge of birth, water birth to me was just like it's always been there. So to
Mm,
understand that no, there's actually a person in particular who brought
mhm.
this as a new wave into the NHS is just nuts to me right now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Well,
Geeky
and
moment, never mind.
it
Yeah.
has been there because I think there's people that would have birthed in water, obviously,
Yeah.
before that, and very naturally, depending on those that maybe live on islands,
Yeah, of
or
course.
there's all sorts of ways
Yeah.
to birth. But yeah, she was a big pioneer in getting
Wow.
it into
Yeah, yeah,
hospitals,
yeah.
and so as we see now, the birth centers
Yeah,
and the big pools and things like that. So
that's cool. Anyway.
yeah, so I started, I just was telling her where I was at, and I was like, I'd always loved working with women,
Yeah.
even from when I was a teen, and I used to go to like youth groups and
Mm.
do mentoring. Even though I'm like, I don't know what I was mentoring anyone when I was 17, but here we
But you
are.
knew it and you did it. Cool.
But yeah, and then she was like, I really see something in you and in a
Mm.
healing capacity, and you should come and work with me. And I was just like, whoa, okay. And literally within a couple of weeks, I
Mm.
was, had the privilege of learning with her and from
Mm.
her. And she's retired as an obstetrician,
Mm.
but went into a lot of alternative medicines,
Yeah.
Ayurvedic, and specifically something called creative healing. So there's just like a natural massage treatment
Mhm.
that essentially helps the body to clear toxins, but it's encouraging its own natural healing.
Okay.
That's what the treatments are based around. So I spent a lot of time working with her, and getting to see her teaching me this method,
Mm.
so training in that, and just working with so many different women from all different walks of
Mm.
life, and supporting them by way of the treatments throughout their pregnancy,
Yeah.
and some of which were actually prior to pregnancy, on a fertility journey, so
Mhm.
trying to conceive. And then yeah, I started attending birth with her, so I did birth assistance with her. And it was just amazing. It was such an honor getting that sort of the knowledge from her,
Mhm.
obviously the medical perspective, but also I think what pulled me more was definitely the more holistic,
Yeah.
the encouraging of the natural the natural ways that the
Yeah.
body can heal itself. And then I went on to do some additional doula training
Mhm.
um, with a company called Nurturing Birth. And so, yeah, everything was just kind of like piecing together.
Yeah.
And within that, I did like, more training in anatomy and
Mm.
physiology. Just like I love the body and
Mm.
how intelligent it is. And I just love, I'm a bit of a geek in the sense that I'm always doing a course. Like my friends will be like, "What course are you doing now, Simone?" I'm like, I can't help myself, honestly. So I think probably going into motherhood and, being sort of postpartum is the longest time I've gone in a lot of years
Without being on a course.
without doing a course
Yeah.
up till recently, because I'm back. I'm started again. But yeah, and then as the years have gone on, I've picked up
Yeah.
different things. But I
Mhm.
think my way is very much about honoring the sacredness of what is the nature of birth.
Mm.
And so all the sort of training that I've done is very much in that realm, and
Yeah.
how we can sort of really take care of ourselves, nurture ourselves, also prior to getting to this journey. Because often, for example, when I've seen people around like fertility stuff, it's like sometimes we're waiting until we need our body to kind of do something
Got you.
for us,
Yeah.
so it's like, how can we just take care of ourselves as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
before we're at a stage where it's like, actually there's something going on.
Mm.
But yeah, so extensive, very broad journey, but everything I feel like I've done
Yeah.
it has really makes up the way that I'm able to hold space
Mm.
today. And yeah, I worked, I was supporting birth until I was about just under 7 months pregnant.
Okay. Mhm.
So yeah, that was.
Challenging or
Do you know what? It wasn't. I
okay.
give thanks. I had a really smooth
Mm.
pregnancy.
Mm.
The normal tiredness and things like that.
Yeah.
But actually, I really loved it.
Okay.
But I did also feel like, okay, I need to like give myself time to be.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be working up till the last moment. But
Yeah.
yeah, but equally I loved, it felt very special. Actually, it
Mm.
was a really good friend of mine. The last birth that I did
Mhm.
before I gave
Yeah.
birth was supporting a friend of mine who had a beautiful home birth,
Lovely.
intended water birth. She wasn't quite born in the water in the end,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. No, just you touching upon the fact that it is true. We are in the habit of living life, doing whatever you need to be doing. That's well and good. But then when you feel like you need your body to do something, that's when you start to focus on X, Y, and Z. But
Mm,
if there's work to be done because you haven't been focusing on it, now you've got this short space of time now to make the changes or tweaks that you need to. But they're really, I feel like it's happening now anyway, bit by bit, but there definitely needs to be a shift in our mindset as to how we treat our bodies, how we nurture our bodies,
mm,
especially if we do want to enter into space of having kids or things like that, whether it's for yourself or your partner as well. So
mm,
I'm glad that you kind of touched upon that.
yeah.
I wanted to know what do you think mothers aren't told about birth but need to know or should know?
How long have we got? How long have we got? Um, that your body knows what it's doing,
Mm,
that God, nature doesn't make any mistakes.
yeah.
Um, and so it's possible. And obviously, everyone's journey is different, right?
Mhm.
But trusting your own intuition, your feels, no matter how you have got to
Yeah.
being pregnant, whether
Mhm.
you've gone on a fertility journey, had fertility treatment, whether
Yeah.
you've fallen pregnant, naturally, I think just doing your best to sit in the seat of your own sovereignty,
Mm,
and really trust the process
yeah.
and get prepared. Doing work to
Yeah.
get prepared. And I know that obviously women, we've been giving birth for years and
Mhm.
years and years, and birth is going to happen. I think
Yeah.
what is a big thing today is that birth is treated like a medical
Mhm.
experience, and it's not. There's this wonderful saying, and I've heard so many people say it in different ways now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know who to quote, but it's in my own way of sort of expressing it is just that, yeah, birth is not it's not a medical experience. It's a natural, experience. It's a natural
Yeah.
journey and process that sometimes needs medical support
Yeah.
or intervention,
Okay.
rather than looking at it as, yeah, a medical experience that
Mm.
sometimes happens naturally,
Yeah, I get you.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like
Mm.
women sometimes are pulled and potentially coerced out of the trust of their own body, especially I think when it's your first.
Yeah.
And we go to the hospital and the doctors, and you want to have all the scans because you want to know
Yeah.
everything's and there's nothing wrong with that,
Mm.
but it's just knowing that you always have a choice, like knowing your
Mm.
rights, knowing, people, so many women have said to me, I didn't know I could say no
Yeah.
to that,
Yeah.
because they wanted to, not because we're saying no because we're just anti, or
Yeah.
no, because we need safety, medical, Western medicine, and the NHS, they have a place, like there's a lot
Mm.
of gratitude to be had that we
Yeah, of
have
course.
the privilege and the
Yeah, yeah.
access. But it's also knowing that, it's a system, and
Mm.
you do get to choose. You don't have to sort of go into these spaces and give over your power in the way of, like, whatever they say. Like,
Yeah.
take the moment to check in with you, with your
Mhm.
body, as well as, maybe what's being presented to you.
Yeah.
um just, yeah, so intuition,
Mhm.
sovereignty, those are the things that I would always love to remind
Yeah.
women about.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you said that as well. I think that was I think in my pregnancy, I think that was I'm glad that I learned that lesson early where it's like, take your time, you can say no, like
Mm,
talk over with yourself, talk over with your partner, know what you guys want to do, and then make sure you stand with that.
yeah.
Adjust as and when you need to, if you need to, but know what you want. Just yeah, having that sovereignty over what you're doing
Mm,
is so key. And I think it definitely helped shape our experience for sure.
yeah.
And I think the first time I ever really had to say no was also quite scary.
Right. Yep. That too.
Yeah, because it was like I ended up developing gestational diabetes at
Mm,
37 weeks. And I was like, oh, we're so close to the end, but c'est la vie, it's
mhm.
happened. And there was the conversations of being induced, which I didn't want to happen.
Right.
Um, happen again. And then by the end of it, I ended up saying yes to having an induction just to make the conversation just stop.
Okay.
Um, then my partner was with me in the car saying, you've agreed to something that you don't want to do.
Mm,
And I was like, I know. It was almost like I've made the appointment. I've had no intention of going, but that's just a ridiculous way to handle something anyway.
mm.
So he kind of like reminded me of what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it. And then the process of getting that cancelled was a whole, just
Rigmarole.
long, just completely. And then in the end, we had an appointment with a dietitian just to make sure I'm on track with my glucose levels, etc. Highlighted that yes, I wanted I wasn't gonna have the induction, and that the biggest thing that kind of really stood out for me in that conversation was, well, you do know that your baby could die from this,
Mhm.
and I'm having to say, yes, I understand the risks or what have you. I'm standing in what I wanted to say, and then we were able to get the appointment cancelled, but
Mm.
pushing back was a real,
Yeah, it
sorry,
feels
I'm hot.
it's big. It
Yeah.
feels big, and it's crazy because it's like,
Mm.
intellectually we know, right? I know
Mm.
that this is my body, my baby. I have a choice,
Mhm.
but also there's a great deal of fear that can
Yeah.
arise when you go through the journey of pregnancy,
Mhm.
and you're preparing for birth. There's so much of the unknown, and
Yeah.
again, I think it's what I love about the body. It's what I love about just the nature of,
Mm.
like, matrescence, that journey,
Mm.
from maiden to mother.
Mm.
And part of the unfolding and the unknowing and facing these fears is all preparing you for, you know, for the journey
Yeah.
of motherhood. But I think, yeah, there is a definitely a lot of, I hear that so much. I've heard
Yeah.
it when I've been in the rooms, and also clients coming back to
Mm.
say, "Oh, this is what happened in my
Yeah.
appointment today,"
Yeah.
and yeah, it can feel really scary to say no.
Mhm.
But it's, again, I think when you have support, so, like, thankfully for you, you had,
Yeah.
a partner that was able to, like, remind you and
Mm.
help you just kind of ground back into what you really wanted. So many people don't have that.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
true.
where, having a birth keep, having a doula,
Yeah.
can come in, really well. I wish that
Mm.
every person that wanted one,
Yeah.
was able to access them, because there's whilst I don't think, by any means a doula is not we're not the god. It's not about us. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's not. We're holding the space for you to,
Mm.
like, remember your own power.
Mm.
Well, I speak for myself. Like, that's
Yeah.
how I, try to honor the space. It's not about me being there. And actually, so much of holding space of doulaing is actually about being. It's
Mm.
not about making yourself busy. Like,
Yeah.
of course, sometimes there's hands-on support, there's words of encouragement, of course, but actually there's so much power in just like witnessing and
Mm.
holding space.
Mm.
um and just like being a reflection of, like, you've got this, you can do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's where having that support to prepare comes in
Mhm.
really handy. Sometimes you need somebody to hold your hand, to
Mm.
encourage you, like, if you're not feeling this, like, ask more questions,
Yeah.
um trust your intuition. And honestly, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that experience of,
Mm.
like, yeah, I didn't want to do this. And I think that's what then feeds into things like, birth trauma, and
Yeah.
feeling like
Mm.
it's never necessarily about because someone didn't get the birth they maybe initially visioned or
Yeah.
desired.
Mm.
It's the way, it's the journey, it's what
Mm.
happened in that space.
Yeah.
And it's generally because they feel like something happened to them,
Mhm.
birth happened,
Yeah.
rather than they were able to make informed
Yeah.
choices. People told them what was going to happen to them,
Yeah.
so yeah, support preparation honestly is key, because it's normal for fears to arrive.
Mhm. Yeah, especially if it's your first time or
Of
you don't
course.
know much about it. Yeah.
Of course, we all need, a helping hand. I remember in my own, like, pregnancy journey, so many
Mm.
people were like, "Oh, obviously you're fine. You know all the things and da da da." And I'm like, meanwhile, just don't think I wasn't having my own little, like, meltdowns, freakouts here and there, and my
Yeah.
own anxieties. And I'm human. And
Human.
even when
Yeah.
we know better, we're not always easily able to access that strength
Yeah.
sometimes. So I had support in
Yeah.
different ways from
Yeah.
various people, other doulas,
Mm.
and my partner, certainly, who
Yeah.
was also able to really keep me grounded in, like, yeah, like, this is
Amazing.
how we want to do things. So yeah, get the support, get prepared.
Yeah. Get prepared. That's key. How does bodywork support women in birth and postpartum recovery?
Mhm. So, I mean, in so many ways, I
Mm.
think, I'm very passionate about, yes, body work, but I'm very passionate about the postpartum journey.
Yeah.
Because, again, like what we were just talking about, it's
Yeah.
like preparing for birth is a big
Mm.
deal. Um,
Mm.
and birth is sacred and wonderful and should
Mm.
be prepared for, but it's also a moment in time. Now,
Yeah.
I also hear the mothers that are like, mine was 70 plus hours. That's more than a moment. Yes, now when I say a moment, within,
Whatever the realms of that
yeah,
is for you.
exactly
Yeah.
right. But postpartum is forever,
Yeah.
and I think that it's having body work
Mm.
is a big part of that, because you need touch. Like, we are essentially, as humans, we're here to be in connection. Like, we hear no man is an island. Like, we need
Yeah.
human connection, we
Mm.
need touch. And I think there are a few pillars of things that we need postpartum. We need good nutrition, we need village,
Mm.
um we need touch,
Yeah.
and that touch might be, I'm very aware that not everyone has the privilege, the access, the finance to be able to have treatment or body work
Mm.
necessarily postpartum, but there are things that you can do, of course, for yourself. There's self massage and things like that, but
Yeah.
in wanting that touch and to receive from someone else, there's things that your partner, can do, that loved ones,
Yeah.
friends, even, and that touch can be a hug, at the right time. You get
Mm.
people coming to see the baby, and often, sometimes, mum is
Yeah.
is is neglected, and it's actually like concentrated energy. Like, how are you,
Mm.
h- you know holding her hand, giving her a hug, like,
Mhm.
or, what do you need? Obviously, in terms of body work, so I tend to do a lot of womb massage and womb wrapping after,
Mhm.
or belly
Yeah.
binding,
Yeah. Mhm.
it's becoming, there's more awareness about it
Yeah.
now, but that essentially is so powerful for the
Mhm.
healing of the body, um in terms of, all of the sort of all your organs that have moved around to
Yeah.
make space, whilst your body's expanding to grow and birth your baby. They're all trying to find their way back,
Mm.
or find their new home,
Mhm.
because we're forever changed
Yeah,
once we
that's true.
go through that
No, that's
journey.
yeah, that's a great way
Right.
to
So
put
I'm
it.
always very mindful of saying, like,
Mhm.
getting back to anything, because I just believe that's not the journey of matrescence and going into motherhood.
Yeah.
You're not going back, you've expanded into this new version of you,
Yeah.
essentially. So, yeah, body work is very powerful to be able to support that healing journey,
Mm.
that connection, that touch, womb massage, belly binding, closing the bones. That's another
Mm.
um, ceremonial sort of space that I hold for mothers, and
Mhm.
that's again a lot of womb massage wrapping
Yeah.
with rebozos, scarves around the hips, the pelvis,
Mhm.
and again, like, what we're doing is, like, honoring this space and the way that you've opened
Mhm.
to give birth, whether you've opened to have a vaginal birth,
Mhm.
or, to have a belly birth or cesarean.
Mhm.
It's just honoring and holding space for that. And also, it's like an energetic closing,
Yeah.
so just honoring that you've opened to become a mother, but also, feeling held, feeling supported, even belly binding, like, you can do, there's a lot of slouching with breastfeeding
Yeah.
or feeding in general, and, your posture changes. There's just a lot of sensitivity, but actually having binding can really just give you a little bit of, in fact, a lot of support.
Okay.
Um, and, on a deeper level also, there's, you can have, of course, like, full body
Mm.
massage, which again, it's great for helping to just flush the lymphatic
Mhm.
system, any sort of fluid retention, which obviously is very common within pregnancy, and edema or swelling. It just helps to, yes, of course, like, there's that relaxation, but on a deeper, on a cellular
Yeah.
level, it's like finding home, helping the nervous system to, just, like, regulate,
Mm.
because there's so much going on in that
Mhm.
postpartum, especially those early days, weeks,
Yeah.
months. You're trying to find your rhythm, you're trying to learn about this new version of you as well
Yeah.
as this baby. So yeah, I feel like body work, I would love to see so much, so much more, so much. So I'm like, what's my words here? But I would love to see more women be
Yeah.
able to receive body work, like, as a
Mhm.
standard,
Yeah.
um, because, yeah, it's key. It's so supportive
Mm.
to healing. Instead, we're offered like a 6-week checkup with your doctor, which most people, I know during COVID, for example, had
Of
like a phone call.
course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is no way to check how
No.
a new mother is doing.
Mm.
Like, it's just not good enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, body work is powerful
Yeah.
at all stages. And again, we touched on earlier, like, different, having that awareness, like, before we need our body to do something or require something of it,
Yeah.
before we want to get pregnant, things like that. All of these things, we get to do, and
Mm.
there's so much we can actually do for ourselves,
Yeah.
self massage and self practice. But yeah, being able to access that, from other experienced practitioners as well,
Mhm.
is really amazing.
Yeah.
I recognize it's a privilege, but um, I hope that it becomes a basic,
Yeah.
an essential,
Yeah. For people. You touched on this as well. Womb wellness. What does that for? What can that look like day to day for someone?
Mm.
What can? Yeah.
Yeah. So womb wellness is, kind of, as it says on the tin, it's like, what is the wellness of your
Mm.
womb space, right? So, um, where we hear so much now about PCOS, the
Yeah.
fibroids, especially as Black women,
Mhm.
you're more likely to experience certainly the fibroids.
Mm.
And we've heard it for years from our aunties and
Yeah.
our sisters and mothers and things like that. And they've just kind of become normalized.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there's all these different, conditions and things that are being experienced within the womb space. So I think on a day-to-day basis, we're looking at, how can we take care, just like we're doing our hair and our nails and
Mhm.
our, what's going on the inside,
Mhm.
and working with that and bringing as much awareness to that as possible. So that can look like, the first, I think, and the most common and obvious thing is like looking at your periods.
Mhm.
And expanding beyond that to looking at your cycle as a
Mm.
whole, because I think we can focus on like what is our menses like, what is our period
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but also there's more stages
Yeah.
than that, and we are cyclical beings,
Mhm.
right? We're moving in cycles, and we're thinking and we're feeling, and our body is expressing differently at different
Mhm.
stages of the cycle. So I think an invitation that I always love to like put out is like looking at your cycle in a more expansive way, not just looking at when you're ovulating, when you want to have a baby, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to make any of us anyone wrong about, like, if that has been your path, because
Yeah.
we get to places, to lessons, and to understanding when we get there, and that's
Mm.
different for all of us. um but yeah, it looks like having an understanding of what your own cyclical nature is. How do you feel, not just when you're bleeding, but
Yeah.
after, how do you feel pre-ovulation?
Mm.
How do you feel, yes, when you're ovulating, after you've ovulating? And you can look at those as kind of like seasons,
Mhm.
right? So you would be seen to be in your winter when you're on your period,
Yeah.
in your spring when you're coming out of that, and then in your summer when you're ovulating and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, let's make a
Let's
baby.
let's literally provide.
Summertime fun. Right. So
Yeah.
and then you're in, yeah, autumn. So then you're preparing again. You kind of come out of the woo,
Yeah.
you kind of going a little bit more inward again, and preparing to bleed.
Mhm.
And even we think about, when you're looking at your cycle, when you are on your period, you feel generally a lot more inward, right? And
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
want to
I think that's fair. Yeah.
it's not that you necessarily want to be at home tucked up in your bed, but there is a slowness that
Mm.
is happening within. And it's like, how can we honor that now? For example, for those maybe that like work a 9 to 5, I would love to see in workplaces that were like women were allowed the first like day or 2 days off.
Yes, that would be great.
But there's a way to go, right? We've got a way to go, but how do you honor where you're at in your cycle? Okay, you
Mhm.
can't take 2 days off of work. You got children. You can't lay down in your bed for 2 days. But maybe there is a way that you
Mm.
you can honor yourself and go slower. Maybe it's that you just go to bed earlier, or
Yeah.
you get a bit more rest, or you're paying more attention to what you're eating.
Mm.
We feel like we want to draw for all of the sugar, but actually sometimes
Yeah.
that can make us feel a lot worse
Mhm.
after the initial hit of sugar.
Mhm. Mhm. No, yeah.
So yeah, I think looking at your cycle as a whole can be a
Mm.
really great way to just sort of understand where you're at, and what you need in your body. Some people feel awful when they're ovulating.
Mhm.
It's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Just like some people feel fine leading up to their period, and others are suffering with PMS,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot. But
Mm.
yeah, it's taken into all the different factors, like your nutrition. What are you eating? Who are you around? What's your environment
Yeah.
like? Yeah, what are you putting in your body? Like, what are you taking in? And how are you feeling at those different
Yeah.
stages? And I think that's a good foundation
Okay.
to look at.
Lots to try and create for yourself. It's true. I think
Yeah.
when you were saying this, I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. And I'm already pinpointing the things that I do or I don't do. Sugar, yes, me. Like
Me
learning what I
too.
need to adjust, whatever else. So it's, yeah, we really need to find the time and
Yeah.
take the time for
Yeah.
ourselves and our bodies, the one body that you have. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I
totally
always
feel
kind of
that.
refer to the womb as like our garden
Yeah.
and like what is the state of the soil?
Yeah.
Like if your womb is the soil, what's happening
Mm.
there? Because we think of a garden, and when there's like we want to grow something, we want to grow some new flowers or some veg or whatever it is, like, but there's loads of weeds.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to do some preparation
Mm-hmm.
and kind of weed out the garden
Mm-hmm.
before we're looking to plant seeds.
There's that word again, no preparation.
Yeah.
Prepare, prepare, prepare.
Exactly, right? And then again, what's the environment once you have planted your
Yeah.
seeds? What's the environment? What does it need to flourish? So yeah, there's a lot. I could talk about the womb space all day. It's our portal of creation
Yeah.
in all the ways. It's not actually just about creating and having a baby,
Yeah.
but actually, the visions, the things that we want to do and offer to the world, that
Yeah.
all is cultivated in that space of creation.
That's true. Touching on you being a mum, how do you balance giving to others in the way that you do and remaining full for yourself and your family?
Good question.
Mm.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. Like I'm definitely still like I'm very much working that out now
Mm.
because I feel like I'm only. I mean, I guess in one sense I probably started working again around 7, 8 months postpartum, very
Okay.
gently, like virtual, a
Yeah.
bit of virtual, like birth work and mentoring,
Okay.
and doing some like course facilitations online. So I feel like, as we touched on before, body work,
Mm.
touch, that it is a big thing for me. I think it has been probably since I discovered like what it was just like to get a basic massage. But
Yeah.
I think for me it's so I have things like craniosacral therapy,
Okay.
osteopathy.
Mm-hmm.
So different kinds of touch depending on what's going on for me,
Yeah.
is a way that I, when I can, I love to sort of keep my own cup full, like
Yeah.
just having that touch, having that space to decompress, release really, really helps me.
Mm.
Um, but also simple things like I'm a big cacao drinker.
Yeah.
So I love, sometimes it's as simple as getting to sit with what is like my little morning medicine,
Mm.
and just have a moment of quiet. Like I was someone, I think, for many years that, who like before living with a partner and
Mm-hmm.
having a child, like just used to having that solo time, that
Yeah.
solo space.
Yeah.
And I think just for my nature, I can refuel really well just by
Nice.
having some time to
Okay.
myself. Sit with my cacao. I love to journal.
Mm.
However, I've journaled probably a handful of times
Yeah.
since giving birth.
Yeah.
So I think we have to move and flow again. We're cyclical, right? Some things
Mm.
work for a time and others don't. But yeah, I try and now definitely like get regular time. Like now I have like um s- a weekly sort of day where I'm like I get a good few hours
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
and I can go and do my body, get some body work,
Mm.
if that's possible. Or I can sit and have a coffee and do nothing.
Yeah.
Not a coffee, I don't drink coffee, but
But
hot chocolate.
yeah.
And or I can do some admin work, whatever, but I
Yeah.
definitely, it's for me, it's time, solo time to
Yeah.
just like refill and reset.
Yeah.
And I do try, obviously I share that with other birth workers that I mentor.
Mm.
I want to be able to be like practicing what I preach, as it
Yeah.
were. So I definitely try and get some time for myself as much as
Yeah.
possible. And I definitely know, like, I'm very grateful that I have a supportive enough partner to be
Yeah.
able to say, like,
I
babe,
need.
I need a minute today.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, all right, cool.
I'm gonna
Like,
let
let
it
me
slide.
let me
Yeah.
hold space. And like he, takes care of our daughter beautifully. So
Mm.
um yeah, I just that time is
Yeah.
is priceless.
Mm.
And I think also getting to a stage where you can ask for help is
Yeah.
is a whole thing,
That's
with
true.
becoming a mother, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I need time, please, someone, anyone. Not anyone, but you know what I
But
mean.
yeah.
Mum, mother-in-law, mother-in-love,
Yeah.
partner,
Yeah.
like who can support
Mm.
in that way. So yeah, that's the way those are some of the things that I do to try and
Mm.
just keep my cup full.
Yeah, that's nice. How I guess for mums listening who are feeling disconnected, whether it's from your bodies or even trying to carve out that time for themselves, what's the what would you say is a gentle place to start? Or where's like a nice
Mm.
trying to create in that space for yourself?
Mm. Mm. I think it's definitely the
Yeah.
asking for support, because anything that you're gonna do for the most part is probably
Mm.
gonna come
Mm.
from that. Sorry. So it's asking for what you need,
Mm.
whether that is like a hug, someone to listen to
Yeah.
you, someone to help you prepare food,
Mm.
someone to look after the baby, your child.
Yeah.
B- Asking for support is, I think it's a big one.
Mm.
Because generally, like obviously, I can say, you can sit and have your time to journal, but I
Yeah.
feel like those moments are like, not what's the right word, not like stolen moments, but
Mm.
obviously we have these parts in our day where it's like our babies are sleeping, like
Yeah.
they're having a nap, and so we can get a moment.
Mm.
But also the mind is still going, like they're still in the space. I do
Yeah.
think it's key to have some time away.
Yeah.
When you can, when it's appropriate.
Mm.
You're early postpartum and you're breastfeeding, like it's not
That's not the
it's not
time.
necessarily the time, right? So I think it's so individual. It's such an individual journey. But I think, yeah, just trying to work out what it is that you need, and if you can't, asking someone for someone to hold space, like
Yeah.
talk to you so that you can find out what that is.
Mm.
And if you don't know, try something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, I had um this idea about what osteopathy was for years,
Mm.
and for some reason all I imagined was like back cracking, and I think I could totally had confused it with chiropractor.
Okay.
But oh my gosh, I would never turn back. Like now I've
Mm.
had cranial osteopathy specifically. But I had to try it
Yeah.
once, and someone recommended, like, go to this person. I've got a friend who's very good at just going, look, just go to this is the person. I'll book you an appointment, just go.
Go.
Like, they're amazing. um so, sometimes you just have to try to know.
Mm.
We can often meet with like a lot of resistance because something's
Yeah.
new,
True.
different. Sometimes we don't want to spend money on
Mhm.
certain things, and actually we can be surprised at the results.
Mm.
But equally, again, I'm aware that sometimes the money isn't available, so you might have to ask your bestie to
Yeah.
rub your foot or massage your
Yeah.
shoulders. I think keeping it simple is so powerful
Okay.
in motherhood, like,
Yeah.
and especially in those early days.
Mm.
Like, just trying to use your voice. What do you need? Maybe you can't use your voice. Maybe you have to send a text
Yeah.
or whatever. But asking for help. Um, I mean, I definitely always recommend body work because
Yeah.
I'm just like, or just if it's not body work, it's like just some space outside of your home that you
Mhm.
can decompress,
Mm.
whether you're sitting, whether you're doing a yoga or a Pilates
Yeah.
or a dance class. Some people are more active, like
Yeah,
they
yeah, that's
love,
true. Moving and things,
movement,
yeah.
like, so it's just what it is for you. And I always encourage, actually, when I work with doula clients,
Mm.
I I will invite them to think about the things that fill you up. Just
Mhm.
like you asked me, like, what things you
Mm.
do. What are those things, and how can you sort of make a bit of a fluid plan of how, and I would generally invite the partner to do that as well. Like,
Yeah.
what things do you both need? Like, generally for the men, it's like go to the gym or
Yeah.
might be go to the studio
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever ways they maybe decompress, and make them a priority. Like, how can you help each other to have that space that you need?
Yeah.
And invite them to do things, like one thing inside the house,
Mhm.
and then like something that's outside the
Mm.
house, because it's not always possible to
Yeah.
get out, or
Yeah,
you
it's
don't
true.
necessarily feel like getting out. Sometimes it might just be that you want an hour to sit in the bath in
Mm.
peace. Um, so, factoring in the things that are important to you,
Yeah.
and asking for that time, you know.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Um, I guess lastly, I'm just thinking on some of the things that you've mentioned, thinking culture, community, impact, things like that. I think it's fair to say that it feels like there's like a growing interest in sacred, holistic birth
Hmm.
paths within our communities. Um, why do you think that is now? If you can voice an opinion on why there is a shift or why there's a growing interest in it.
Hmm. I
Okay.
think it's
Last heavy question, last one.
no, it's good. I could talk about this stuff all day with you. It's great. I think that definitely social media
Mm,
has given us access to a lot more information, and I think there's so much greatness within that, and there's also it can be really tricky, because also it's like there's so much information out
yeah.
there. What do I go with? What do I look at?
Mm,
What's true? What's not?
yeah.
What's for me? What's not? So yeah, social media I think has been a big part to play in that. But I also just think as well, yeah, we're in a time where I think within the state of the world, we do have a lot of opportunities to look at ourselves more,
Mm,
like, who are we? Who do we want to be? How are we living our lives? Are we we're seeing all different things come up health wise, especially, like,
yeah.
I think obviously COVID was a big
Yeah. Yeah.
catalyst in many
Yeah.
ways of, like, looking at our health. What are we putting in our bodies? What are
Mm,
we willing to put in our bodies or not?
mm,
Um, and I think that I feel like, yeah, there's in that invitation to sort of look at ourselves and relating that to sort of birth. Again, it's coming back to that. Well, what do I want to do? How do I
yeah.
want to do it? I think especially for Black women, and in the birth world, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you've heard about, there's this whole, it was 5 times more. It
Yeah.
has
Going down
reduced
to
a
like
little bit
three
to,
times more or something, three
yeah,
and a
to about
half.
3.5.
Mm,
You know, still way too much,
yeah.
right? And sorry
Yeah.
to give context to that, to die in
Yeah.
childbirth, or to have poor birth
Yeah.
outcomes. And I remember specifically actually having a mother call me during COVID and going like, yeah, I want to doula because I've heard about this 5 times more thing, and
Yeah.
I'm just so scared. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that shouldn't have to be our leading narrative,
Mm,
um but I think that, yeah, there's so much what's the word, yeah, there is so much information out there. I'm thinking about the question now, and I've completely lost what you said. Why do I think that there's so much?
yeah, you were still on track.
I
No.
was still on track.
Why is it like, I guess, yeah, such a growing interest in this area of work now? And like
Yes.
the need,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Bring me back, because I'm like, I can go. There's so many parts. I could just go off on a tangent down here. So, yeah, I think social media has been a big part of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, us taking, we are stepping into our power. I do believe there is a big part
Mm,
of that, taking, learning how to, of course, advocate for ourselves, but just thinking about what do we want and how do we get that. I feel like our generation is like more willing
mm-hmm.
to, or maybe not more willing to take a stand, but there's just more self-awareness.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
and I feel like generations before us weren't necessarily, they just had a different set of things going
yeah.
on, right? When we
Yeah.
look at our parents and our grandparents, and,
Mm.
this was like, they were on more like basic survival and how to survive
The world
the
that they're
world
in. Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
having to exist in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, which I think there's so much positivity in
Mm,
the fact that, yeah, we are thinking about our own sovereignty. Who are we? What do we want? And how do we want to live our lives?
yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful thing, and I hope that we see more of it.
Mm,
That we can um always have an awareness of how we're living our lives, what
yeah.
we're put in, in our bodies.
Mhm.
And in terms of, birth, i- it's a moment, as I described it before. It's like this moment in time, this huge moment in time that is with you forever.
Yeah.
And so we should be thinking about it. We should be
Yeah.
preparing for it. Sorry, we should be treating it as sacred,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because
It
yeah,
is.
I mean, I think in when I first came up with the name, the most sacred journey,
Mhm.
it's essentially, yes, most people think, oh, it's like that journey of pregnancy, right? But actually, it's broad in the sense of there's so many journeys within the journeys,
Yeah.
like the journey to motherhood. Sometimes for people, we're looking at just the journey of fertility,
Mm.
yes, the journey of pregnancy, that journey of postpartum.
Yeah.
It's also layered, but also so intertwined.
Mhm.
So, and the sacred part of it is any part that we bring our awareness to,
Yeah.
like when we're able to have that, is what we're talking about, like the womb wellness, when we can like turn our awareness sort of inward and go
Yeah.
like, what do I need for this time now, or for me dealing with my fibroids, or me
Mhm.
wanting to conceive, or me as a new mother postpartum, like what do I need
Mm.
now? What nutrition do I need? What support? What body work? All of these things. So yeah, I think it, we could always do with more of that,
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Simone, thank you so much for your time. Listen, I could go on and on and on. I think I say this every time after every episode. Like, I need you back again because
Oh.
there's just so much more to go into and to delve into. And
Yeah, yeah, always. This is listen, I'm like, have we been, it feels like we've been talking for like 5 minutes.
I know. I feel
Like,
like I've just started to scratch the surface. But anyway, next time.
yeah,
Next week, Monday.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for your
I'd love
time.
to come back. But yeah, thank
Perfect.
you for having
Yeah.
me.
Genuinely
Lovely.
appreciate everything that you had to share. And yeah, just great.
Thank you.
That's